Salutations all, this is Christy Thomas and this is a updated video lesson on speech support. So let's go ahead. Let's talk about supporting material when it comes to speeches. Supporting material in public speaking presentations this refers to the facts, statistics, testimony, examples, and stories that bolster your claims. This is it's just the supporting material to what you're putting out into the world. Whether you're informing us or something, or you're trying to sway your audience to believe or realign in your ideas, beliefs, or values, speech support comes in. This is where speech support comes in. So let's talk about the kind of speech support that's out there that can be used in speeches. So there's facts, statistics, testimony, examples, and stories. That all comes into play. It also depends on what kind of speech you're doing. You know, I give you genre: informative, celebratory, persuasive. You go with the topic, and as always, I always say this: please choose a topic that you A, know, B, have interest in. If you pick something that you just really could care less about, it shows. I always say pick something that brings you joy, or that you have knowledge in, or you have interest in, because then it really reflects in your speech. That's a whole different lesson. Well, actually, it's not. They're all the lessons throughout them. So, depending on speech, depends on what kind of support that you need. A lot of persuasive speeches, all speeches, I believe, should have facts, but persuasive speeches, statistics come into more to play. Testimony comes into play in all of the speeches, examples in all of them, stories in all of them. Do you see what I'm saying here? And it's also setting up the mood of the speech. Maybe you want to start your speech off with like a really eye-opening statistic. That's a way to grab an audience. Or perhaps you tell a story. And when I say story, this is going to be my favorite example. Golden Girls, Sophia. Picture it, Sicily, 1912. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Story. You're like, what happened in Sicily in 1912? I must know, I must listen. And it's also knowing who your audience is. That comes into play big on any speech, not just with support. So let's break down the different kinds of support. So there's facts. Facts are verifiable truths or information that is independent of opinion. So this is actual. We know for a fact, yes, this happened. This happened. So they're contrasted with beliefs and opinions, but facts is we know. We know the height of buildings. That's a fact. We know information about historical figures because they wrote it down from first person. We know about cultures and civilizations because they were written down by that culture and that civilization. Those are facts. We know who won the Super Bowl last year because we watched the game. We know who won the last sports game that you watched because they won. It was a fact. It's not like, I don't know, kind of like the other team won. No, you know for a fact if someone has more points than the other. Or, these are things that are, I'm going to say, concrete. Now, that doesn't mean later on the road, facts can be like, oh, about that. But for this, they are verifiable truths. We know them to be true. Okay. Facts come in handy in all forms of speeches. It's really great. You want to come off as honest and truthful in your speech. You don't want to have the audience question your credibility. And by giving false, you are giving the world to question your credibility. So moving forward with statistics. Statistics they refer to the numerical facts or measurements about a large group or collection. I want to apologize in advance if I'm not keeping eye contact with my recording device. My notes are in front of me and to the side, so That's why I'm kind of looking off here and there. So back to statistics. The quantitative evidence, the measurement based on numbers. When you hear statistics, it's a lot like, well, 79% of Americans, or 28% of teens, or 56% of millennials, or alpha, whatever the case may be here. That percentage, that's a statistic. This comes into play. It comes into play in all speeches, but I really see statistics used more in persuasive speeches when someone is trying to get their audience to sway their beliefs, their ideas, or to go along with their saying. That's where statistics really, I see, play a huge part. Like I said, they're useful in all speeches. Along with statistics, you came across in math, the average, that's all in statistics, and different fields of study uses statistics to understand what has happened, what's going to happen based off of what has happened. But anyway, statistics really come, like, I see it more in play with persuasive speeches, and that's my personal opinion. That is not a concrete fact. That is my personal opinion out of what I've seen in this course. It also comes into play, but when I say other speeches, like, you could be saying, well, in 2011, the highest grossing film was blah, blah, blah. Or perhaps you're speaking about a particular musician. Well, they were the highest grossing female country artist. They performed this many concerts, this many, their album sales compared to contemporaries of their genre in this year, and then you give statistics. That all falls into it. And with statistics, you gotta cite the source, because unless you're that's your field of study, you're generally finding that information out somewhere. So it's just citing your source. And it comes in medical fields. Truth commercials are full of statistics. When they talk about cancer or heart disease, you generally hear a statistic. All that comes as well. When you hear statistics, like if you think of commercials, you will hear statistics or see statistics or ads. Sometimes you gotta be like, what is the gain of them using this statistic? Now, that's not to say that it's not true or false. It's just sometimes companies can be a bit biased when releasing information, or they may not give all the variable working parts. So, what that kind of falls into, it's called cherry picking, and cherry picking is the fallacy of incomplete information. That means they're not giving you all the information, they're just giving you what they need for their ideas and thoughts. So we have talked about facts and statistics. Let's move forward now into testimony. Testimony is the sharing of viewpoints, perspective, or opinions of an individual. There's expert testimony, and then there is lay testimony and personal experience. Expert testimony is used for a person who claims to be or widely acknowledged as an authority in a particular profession. What do I mean by that? The wheels were turning. Did you see them? Oh my gosh, sometimes words are hard. Expert testimony. Think of court cases. Oh, this is an expert witness. So these are people that are credible in the field that they are discussing. Again, a firefighter can give us great information on how to prevent fires, on what to do in case of. That's credible information. How to fly a plane. I would like to talk to a pilot. I'm not going to talk to, Joey down the road who doesn't have their license on how to fly a plane. Expert testimony. A doctor. If I want medical advice, I'm going to talk to somebody in the medical field. If I want dental advice, I'm going to talk to someone in the dental field, so forth and so forth. Its citing beliefs and informed opinions of experts can lend a speech you deliver added credibility, especially if you're speaking on a topic that extends beyond your basic facts or veers into matters open to dispute. So by citing an expert, someone's testimony that's an expert, it gives more credibility to you and to your speech itself or your presentation. Now, lay testimony, this is everyday folks, useful support. So these comes great for fundraising for foundations. People will share their stories. You know, fundraising happens. There's GoFundMe's. That's a really, really loose example. But there are all kinds, you know, donate to this and that. And people, you know, you hear testimonies from people on why this support is, why this foundation needs your support. This is when speeches call for common everyday experiences when you want to hear why something's important, why we should do this, why we should do that. You know, testimonies. Let's go back to school as an example. If you believe school would benefit from starting later, maybe you want to hear the testimonies from students or teachers or parents or all of the above on the benefits of why. You know, personally, when there are hour or 2 hour delays with school, it's just much more pleasant experience in the mornings trying to get my kids out the door and myself. Because, you know, I don't know about you, I am not an early morning person. Never have been, never will be. But personal experience, this is where you're drawing both expert and lay testimony for speech. It's not the whole story, but personal experience comes in handy too. If you're talking about, let's give an example. Why, okay, not to push anyone's buttons, but gun reform. And experience and testimony came from victims of shootings. School shootings, public shootings, insert here. But we heard and still hear experiences from those that were there firsthand. And you also get testimony from, you know, psychologists and professionals. And then we also hear testimony of folks that weren't in it, but loved ones were, and just the ramifications. So I didn't give that example to cite an emotion or anything. It's just to give you a better understanding of what I'm talking about when it comes to personal experience and the different kinds of testimony. Okay. So there's also, we've discussed facts, statistics, testimony, and examples. Examples are an illustration of a claim of fact or an opinion. What do I mean by there? Apples to oranges. Tastes like chicken. Those are very generic examples, but that gives people an idea of what they're talking about when it comes to examples. With examples, the idea is you're creating a mental image for your audience to understand or, you know, visually see. So you use more descriptive language within it as well. Then the last one is stories or narratives. Stories are extended examples that follow a familiar pattern that include a beginning, a middle, and an end. And in this course, you do storytelling speeches specifically for that reasoning, but not specifically. That's why I have you choose storytelling speeches. But it's also so you find comfortable, words are hard, in your public speaking voice. And stories also help create a human connection. And I know some folks myself, I am also guilty of this. It's all, when I say human connection, is somebody could be telling you something and you give a story that you relate to it, as in something similar happened to you, and it's not because you're trying to one up someone or you're trying to seek attention. It's how you are creating connections. But it's through stories and narratives that help create that human connection within public speaking or presentation or just communication itself. These are, and stories have been handed, so much of our information and history has been handed down through stories and narratives or orally, before written language. And then those stories were then wrote down and then retold and retold and retold, and they're still being retold in different medias and platforms. It's really quite amazing if you think about it. But when it comes to support, if it's, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, if it's something not originally from your mouth or your thought or your idea, give credit where credit is due. Cite your sources. Cite. When you are citing orally, you need to include, if they're credentials of an author, say it's a book, a magazine, a published article, whatever the case may be here, or the type of source, whether it's a book, an interview, a song, a speech, whatever may be here. If the source has a title, not all sources do. Perhaps you're just getting a direct quote from someone or a direct quote from a television show. So you be like, I did a mini thesis on the communication of gamers. I started my mini thesis with a quote from South Park. So I cited the source in episode blah 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 from South Park. Well, first I gave the quote and was like, this quote was from episode from South Park. And then the date. And again, some stuff's not dated. But generally, you want to, if it's written, who wrote it, where'd you find it from? Was it from an interview with someone? Was it from a book? Was it from a magazine? Was it from a web page? Was it from a song? Was it from a movie? Was it from a script? Was it from a book, like a book that you read? Type of the description. Was it, title or description of the source. This is, if it's a book or an article or a magazine, you give that title. The description would be, this was an interview on, I don't know, 2020 or Good Morning America or blah, 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 blah. And the date, if it's there. The best way, when you think about citing sources orally, think of TV anchors or radio journalists, how they report news stories. That's the best examples I can give you. So again, your 5 major categories was facts, statistics, testimonies, examples, and stories/narratives for supporting your speech. So all that is contextual reasoning. Contextual reasoning concerns thinking about the kinds of support you can use for a speech, giving its specific requirements. All right, folks. That is the condensed version of support in speech support. So again, questions or concerns, please reach out to me, and I hope that you're having an amazing, fabulous week. Thanks so much. Bye.